Yikes. Is it over yet? Oh, no, not the game. I mean the season. Yeah, that was painful. So this is the postcast. We're going to get into this shortly. Just going to give some folks some time to try to find us. I know it's still football going on. So yeah, it's going to take a few moments, but the second half of this is going to be a mailbag. So I'm going to kind of go on a rant. I have some things I want to rant about in the first half, and then in the second half, I'm going to try to get to as many questions, comments, just awful takes as possible. So make sure to get those in the comments wherever you're watching, YouTube, Facebook, and I will try to get to as many as possible. I know it would take hours to get to all of the hot takes from this game, but I'll do my best. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. If you're not subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you would like the podcast version of this podcast, make sure to go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Overcast, wherever you get your podcast. Hit the subscribe button. Even if you would rather watch it here, if you could go over there and hit the subscribe button, still appreciate it. Maybe leave a rating, leave a review. It's painful enough to have to watch these games. It's even more painful to have to come on here and talk about them. But I do it for you. So do me a favor, go rate, go review, go subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts, and we will go from there. All right. I gotta gather myself here. Get into character, which is, trying not to just curse out everybody. All right. Is it over yet? Oh, no, not the game. The season. The 2022 Saints season. Is it over yet? Because it sure feels that way. Welcome in to Inside Black and Gold. My name is Jeff Nowak, WWL digital sports producer, and we are going to talk about that train wreck that we all just unfortunately lived through out in Pittsburgh. And man, that was rough. I'm going to go off on a rant here, so enjoy that as much as you can. The second half of the show is going to be a live mailbag, so we're collecting questions throughout the first half, and we're going to dive into them in that second half. But yeah, I mean, just to recap that game, just imagine a train on the tracks, just kind of tooting along, not very fast because it's not doing that well to begin with. It's missing some key components, but you can still get on it, you can still ride it around. Still got an engineer in the front, and then about halfway down the tracks, it just flat out just falls on its side and just bursts into flame. And that is a pretty accurate description for what happened to the Saints in Pittsburgh today. It was a cold weather game. Maybe that played a role in the fact that the Saints team never seemed to get off the bus. But I think it's really just more of the same of what we have seen from the Saints team all season, right? I wish I could say I was surprised by the beatdown that was put on the Saints today, and I can't say that I am. The Steelers won 20-10. And I've had a few people say, well, it wasn't on the defense. Anytime a defense only allows 20 points, the offense should be able to get it done. And while you're not patently wrong, I'm not giving the defense a pass in that game. I mean, it should have been 26 points, right? The Steelers kicker just completely could not make a field goal. That doesn't mean the Saints played better. It just means that the Steelers kept them alive in the game, and the Saints were still unable to take advantage of that. I'm not giving the defense credit for that. They didn't do anything to make him miss those field goals. They just missed. Now, where this defense really let me down in this game, specifically, Blake Gillikin goes out there and lays a 58-yard net punt. I believe you were still tied 10-10 at this point. And not only do you not force a 3-and-out, do you not get a safety, do you not get a turnover, do you not make any impact play whatsoever, you allow them to drive all the way downfield for points. Yes, this is on the defense. This is also on the offense. This is on everybody, but you knew you were going into that game without half of your offensive line. By the end of the game, you were missing 3/5 of your starting offensive line when James Hurst went down and you replaced him with Landon Young. So you knew that you were going to have a difficult time on offense. You did. And you needed the defense to take control of this game, to harass Kenny Pickett, to force him to make mistakes. And while you do have to give them credit, they did get 6 sacks, one of, 5 plus 1 gift for Cam Jordan at the end of the first half. They didn't play well. I mean, they should have had 10 sacks in this game. Seriously. Like, Kenny Pickett ran them ragged the same way Lamar Jackson ran them ragged. And when it's Lamar Jackson, you can get on board with it. When it's Kenny Pickett, you just can't. You can't let that happen. And you needed the defense to step up, and they did not do it. There was 10 penalties. There were 6 penalties that allowed a first down. Right? I mean, you cannot give the defense a pass in this game. You can't give Andy Dalton a pass in this game. You can't give the play calling a pass in this game. You can't. I mean, you can probably give the offensive line a pass in this game because none of them were there, right? If we want to, rake Calvin Throckmorton and Lewis Kidd and Landon Young over the coals, go for it. I'm not going to do it because they're the backups. They're not supposed to be in there. It is what it is. It's a question of what do you do at this point, right? Like, we're going to continue to hear throughout the week from these players, from the team. Okay, we're still alive. We're only a game and a half out or 2 games out, whatever. 5-5 is the best record in the NFC South. That's the Bucks. The Falcons are 4-6. The Panthers are 3-6, 3-7 maybe. And the Saints are 3-7. And so, yeah, sure. Mathematically, you're still alive. Mentally, you are dead in the water. Like, you cannot look at this team and say, okay, yeah. I can see how they turn it around. Like, yeah, mathematically you're still in it, but if you can't beat the Steelers, if you can't beat this Steelers team, a team that has not scored a touchdown from more than 8 yards beyond the end zone this year, they haven't scored a touchdown of more than 8 yards this year, and you just got manhandled by them. They ran for over 200 yards with Jaylen Warren and Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris, who hasn't been able to run on anybody. They just beat you up. And I just, I hate it. I hate it so much. Here's what DA had to say on the kind of situation the Saints are in after the game.
Well, look, I mean, when you get in situations like these, you have to fight your way out of it. There's no other way to get out of it other than fight your way out of it. And, this is where you got to lean on the leadership of the group, and they got to pull us through. Well, look, I mean, when you get in situations like these.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but I don't know if there is fighting your way out of it. I don't know if there is a solution other than burn it down. This roster has been teetering on the precipice of just being too old, not having enough playmakers at key positions, not having enough depth for a while now. Part of that has been, leveraging draft assets and not being able to bring in quality pieces in the mid to late rounds, right? Like, Jaylen Warren was a 7th round pick. You know why the Saints don't have players coming in where they're like, oh man, that was a steal in the late rounds. Think of Marcus Colston, Zach Strief, right? These guys who were late round picks and suddenly you're like, wow, where did they come from? You haven't been making those picks the last 3-4 years because you have traded virtually all of your 6th, 7th round draft picks. So you don't even have options at these skill positions to say, oh yeah, let's give that guy a try. He's not getting it done. Let's see what this guy has to offer. You don't have any of that. You have what you have. But all that being said, I do think it's going to be easy to blame Andy Dalton for this game. I don't think he played that badly in the sense that my expectations for Andy Dalton aren't that high. I could have told you going into this game that Andy Dalton's ceiling is below having to make up for missing 3 of his offensive linemen. So in that sense, I got exactly what I expected out of Andy Dalton. I thought he threw the ball reasonably well. I don't understand the decision to throw it up to Kevin White. But my bigger gripe is, why was Kevin White on the field at all in that circumstance? Where was Marquez Callaway? Where was the guy who you actually trust to go up and high point a ball? I don't know. Where was Chris Olave at that point of the game? Why is he not the guy you're targeting downfield? Why is it Kevin White? So I put that on the coaching. I put that on the play calling. Sure, you put it on Andy Dalton, but that's his read and he's open and you put the ball up. Kevin White should have came down with that ball, but he's Kevin White. So all of a sudden the decision is questionable because of who you're throwing it to. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have thrown the ball. It just means the players on the field have to be better and the players on the field have to perform better. I thought it was a decent pass. I mean, you could say it was underthrown. He gave him a chance. Whatever. The defender made a good play on the ball. Kevin White didn't make a good play on the ball. The other interception got tipped out of Jarvis's hands. Was it a good throw? I don't know. But either way, these weren't bad throws. He was sacked twice. He extended a few plays. Those were my expectations for Andy Dalton. Just going to say it. But going into this season, my reason for not starting Andy Dalton, for not wanting to see Andy Dalton, was because of exactly that. His ceiling is low. What you're going to get, but he's not going to make up for issues up and down the roster. He needs things to work around him to be successful, and that just hasn't been the case, right? And so you're looking at this and you're saying, why would you continue to go with Andy Dalton? And you have fewer and fewer kind of legs to stand on as you go through. This is what DA said about the situation at the quarterback position after the game, which boils down to nothing.
I'm not going to get into that right now. We just came off the game. We'll have plenty of time to evaluate where we're at in a lot of areas.
Yeah. Now, while he didn't say anything there, this is kind of how DA operates, is he will either give you an affirmative response or he will give you no response. And the no response is along the lines of being a no. That doesn't make sense, but you get what I'm saying. If he was going to stick with Andy Dalton at quarterback, he would have told you that. And by not answering the question and accepting the mystery, he is effectively saying, yes, we're going to reevaluate the quarterback position. At least that's my read on the situation. And I don't see how you could do anything else, mainly because nothing has worked. Nothing about this season to this point has worked. You went, so 17 of 24, 174 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Okay, where is it? Oh, okay, yeah. The Saints went 3 for 12 on third down. They went 0 for 1 on fourth down. They only had a 3rd and 5 or shorter twice in this game. There was only 2 times. 2 of those 12 third downs were of less than 5 yards. One of them was late in the game. They didn't even convert it because it was a 3rd and 1, and they slammed Alvin Kamara into the line. That didn't work. They slammed Andy Dalton into the line. That didn't work, and you turned it over. The Saints actually got the ball back in the same situation because Matthew Wright missed another field goal badly. And so you had a chance and you went downfield, but you just don't have the dynamic playmaking at the quarterback position with Andy Dalton in there. And I just don't see any way you get around saying Jameis Winston should be the starter of this football team. Now, the question becomes, how healthy is Jameis Winston? Because despite what DA said, there is no way he is 100% healthy. That was a misleading way to describe the situation regarding Jameis Winston's health. At best, it was misleading because he's not Wolverine. He can't be healthy. He fractured a tendon in his foot, or he ruptured a tendon in his foot. It is a long recovery process, and him playing at any point the last few weeks would have been at something sub 100%. Now, the correct way for him to approach starting Andy Dalton would say, Jameis Winston is healthy enough to play, but we are going with Andy Dalton. Now the question is Jameis healthy enough to start? And not only start behind an offensive line that is not going to protect him. That's the question. I don't want to put Jameis Winston in a situation where he's going to get destroyed. And he is still dealing with injuries. Will he make them worse by getting blown up behind the line of scrimmage? I don't know. If you're a Jameis Winston fan, I'm not sure you want to put him in that situation. Even if you want to see him start, I don't know if that's the situation you want to put Jameis Winston in. Even the most diehard Saints fan might question that. But I don't see how you go one more week without evaluating every single position on this team. That includes the coaching staff. Every single position on this team needs to be evaluated, and you have to decide where you're going and what's worth salvaging. Because if you went into this season saying, okay, we can salvage what we have and turn this into a competitive roster with continuity by keeping the coaching staff, by maintaining these weapons and finding a quarterback who can get the job done, and keeping DA as head coach and keeping Pete Carmichael as offensive coordinator and keeping Ryan Nielsen and Chris Richard and all these assistants and all of this. And your idea was, yeah, we can be a playoff team. Well, that experiment has gone down in flames. And so you're reevaluating everything right now. And if you're going to tear everything down, I don't see how DA is your coach beyond this season. That said, you watch this game, and if you are a prospective head coach watching this game, if you are on the short list of someone the Saints might be calling, you want to come coach this team right now? You want to walk into that locker room and say, "Oh, we don't have a first round pick. Oh, we don't have a quarterback. Oh, everyone's hurt." Every year, the entire team goes down hurt. We have 17 people on IR. There's no young players. Oh, maybe like 3 or 4. Oh, great. Yeah. No, I'm gonna pass. Anyone with options would not accept that job. You have to try to salvage things and put it in a position where it would even be worth coming in to coach this team, because no one wants to show up. Keep in mind, firing DA mid-season, that sends a very difficult message out to the rest of the league. You don't want to be the team that fires a head coach in his first year. It's difficult to even say second year. Like, you have to really go down in flames to be fired in your second year as a head coach. Unfortunately, we're looking at a guy who was 11-35 as a head coach. So that's tough. But I don't think that you gain anything by firing Dennis Allen into the sun, as I've seen on Twitter. I don't think you gain anything from that. You have to fix the issues and see what you can salvage this season, but you have to make changes. Right? You can't just say, "Oh, yeah, we're going to figure this out. Run it back. No, you have to make changes at key positions. You have to figure out what works and what doesn't. Maybe the situation you want to be in is, okay, we have young players. We're going to put them in. We're going to see if we can develop them. We're going to see what they have. You don't have any of those. So I don't know where you go from there. But man, you look at the numbers from this game, they're bleak. Alvin Kamara, eight rushes for 26 yards, 3 catches for 19 yards. Taysom Hill, 3 carries for 1 yard. Ugh. And that's the thing, is Kenny Pickett didn't even play that well. 18 of 30 for 199 yards. And you just could not do anything with it. The defense just didn't have heart late in the game. The second week, you could say that. They weren't able to get the ball back for the offense. You get a punt delivered on the 2-yard line, and you're unable to even force a punt on that drive. It's just ugly. And I don't know, like, again, we can keep talking about it. We're going to keep hearing about how the Saints are still in the NFC South race. And technically that's true. But again, if you can't beat the Steelers, if you can't beat this team this year, and you can't, or I take that back. If you can't even be competitive with the Steelers, right? A team that went to this game 2-6 and has one of the worst offenses in the NFL, then what are we doing here? Why are we pretending that this is going to get better? Because it's not. Unless you make significant changes. And I'm usually the optimist here. Like, I don't like coming on in all black like it's a funeral and saying like this season's over. But man, guys, this season's over. Let's be real. Like, the best you can hope for is to start playing competitive football down the stretch, so that you go into the offseason with some positive feelings and some idea of the structure of this team going forward. I don't know if that's going to happen. I know it's not going to happen if you keep running it back with the same structure you've had. Maybe you turn to someone else at quarterback, and suddenly there's this kind of culture shift, paradigm shift, and you're able to win a couple games in a row and get on a streak. But I think in order to do that, you would have had to find a way in Pittsburgh. And I don't know. It's just something that you got to do, and you got to figure it out. And I just don't know if this coaching staff and this front office is going to be able to do it. But yeah, other than that, things have been great. Again, you're listening to Inside Black and Gold. My name is Jeff Nowak. I hope you feel great after that long rant. Make sure to subscribe for more of that quality content. And I'll be coming back with a mailbag to answer a lot of the questions that I'm sure have been very kind and positive toward the coaching staff and the players. And we're gonna get into a lot of that. Make sure to stick around. I will be right back on Inside Black and Gold. And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold. This is the post-cast edition, the therapy session, if you will, to go over the Saints 20-10 butt whooping at the hands of the Steelers, the formerly 2-6 Steelers. I will say, I think this Steelers defensive front seven is very good. I mean, I think that's just kind of an AFC North staple, and it's just what you get when you face teams from that division. Saints couldn't block a lick. We knew they were going to struggle in that department, but I didn't think they were going to struggle that badly. TJ Watt is really, really good. They could not block TJ Watt. It's just frustrating. But this is not going to be more of my ranting. This is going to be a mailbag edition to go through some of your rants, to get some of your complaints off your chest, right? And I like to do this after the games because it's important. It's cathartic. And we're going to start with Mithra Pai. She's been, I assume it's a she, been going through. We'd be better off letting Kamara run the Wildcat. I think you'd be better off letting Kamara touch the ball. How about that? Like you look at like what the Giants are doing with Saquon Barkley, and I get it. You don't want to overload a running back, but there's overloading a running back, and then there's giving him 11 touches in a game. The Saints didn't extend drives, which fine. You didn't get a ton of plays, so 11 touches. He did lead the team, but one of the reasons you didn't extend drives is because you didn't get the ball into the hands of Alvin Kamara enough. So I don't think those are mutually exclusive, but this team has proven week after week that they cannot incorporate Alvin Kamara into the offense in the way they need him to be to win games consistently. Why that is the case, I don't know. But they should be doing a better job of getting him involved. No question. One more. This team needs more than a QB. We don't have one on the team. I mean, this team needs a lot of things. Let's be real. This team needs a lot of things. I don't think there's enough team speed on defense. I don't think you have enough playmakers on offense. I mean, like, your backup running back is Jordan Howard. And even if Mark Ingram is healthy, your backup running back is 33-year-old Mark Ingram, right? Like, it's not like that's a positive thing. Like, he's Mark Ingram is still a competitive NFL running back, but where is the depth? Like, where are the good young players who you're bringing up, right? Like, you watch the Cowboys playing, like, oh, look at this Tony Pollard guy that they brought in behind Ezekiel Elliott, right? Like, you bring in those players, you draft those players, you develop those players. Jalen Warren, right? He's an undrafted guy. Like, where are these young skill players? Because the Saints don't have them. Outside of Chris Olave, the guy they brought in this year, which was a departure from your typical draft decision making, right? They drafted Traquan Smith in the 3rd round a few years back, and that's about it at the wide receiver position. So I don't understand this hesitance to use draft assets on skill position. It's a team that's built through the lines, and I get that, but year in, year out, it just doesn't seem like you have the pieces. And I just don't know how you change that without changing your philosophy in the draft. Saints should have made a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I guess. I don't see how he would have changed the fortune of this team. This is not a competitive football team, and it's not necessarily an issue at quarterback, right? There are far deeper issues with this team. And I start with the defense. Like, we can't always keep coming back to the offense, and I get it. Like, that's going to be where the noise goes a majority of the time. But the offense was not the side of the ball that you expected to be dominant. You didn't. You expected the defense to be dominant, and they have absolutely not been an asset. The defense as a whole has not been a game-winning unit in all but one game this year. And I don't know what happened in that. Maybe they got hyped up because Alvin Kamara stood up in the locker room and they got the positive vibes and went out there and they kicked ass against a bad Raiders team. Because that has not translated the last 2 weeks from the defensive side of the ball. The energy hasn't been there. And I mean, if you went into this season and told me that this defense was going to be average to bad, I would have told you blow it up, blow the team up, because if this defense is not going to directly impact winning games, you're going to lose a lot of games. And that's what's happened. Kyle Brister, if Dennis Allen stays, then Carmichael has to go. I mean, here's the thing. Again, the whole point, the whole idea behind hiring Dennis Allen as the head coach was you are maintaining continuity, and you're going to maintain offense coordinator, defense coordinator, assistants, like all these key positions you're going to maintain. And so you're going to maintain Dennis Allen, who is comfortable with all of them and is good at leading that group. If you're going to start from scratch and you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator and you're bringing in a new defensive coordinator, maybe, I don't know. I don't think you do that with DA. And I like DA as a guy. Like, I don't think he's genuinely a bad person. Like, I just don't think he is able to lead a locker room in a way that you have to as a head coach. And it's I like it's tough to say that, but at a certain point, you look at the results, and it's like that you are what you are. You are what the record says you are, and the record says you're an 11-35 head coach. I don't know what you do with that. But yeah, the thing is, I think you do have to give him a chance to turn things around, right? I don't think you're just going to fire him because, again, who you bringing in, right? But I don't know. It's frustrating. David Weil, DA has a lot of head coaching experience with crappy teams. He's perfect for this situation. Sure. Kyle Brister, can you say Frank Reich? Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be options. I mean, I think that there is a scenario where you turn things around, you start playing better, but I think at this point it's too late in the season. Whether that happens or not, it's too late in the season. You've already kicked that down the road. And like, you would have to at this point finish the season 6-2 to get to 9-7. Now this is I'm sorry, to get to no 6-2. I'm sorry, 5-2 to get to 8-9 on the year. And I don't think this is a team that's gonna. You haven't won 5 games in your first 10. I don't think you're gonna win 5 games in your last 7. But yeah. Christopher Fava, the O-line is bad. How are they going to block Aaron Donald? That is a good question. The only thing I can say is that the Rams offensive line might be just as bad, and I don't know if Matt Stafford is going to play in that game. Now, if you had gone to Pittsburgh and won this game, and you had harassed Kenny Pickett, and the offense struggled because your offensive line is in shambles, but you were able to put up 15 points and win a game 15-10. Like, I go back to a game like the Saints Jaguars in 2019, where you went in there with Teddy Bridgewater and you walked out with a 13-6 win, right? I think you also won a game 12-9 that year. Like, if you were able to win games that way, then I would feel completely differently about this Rams matchup, because you should be able to harass either Matt Stafford or John Walford in the pocket against that offensive line. And if you can do enough, and you can force turnovers, and you can get sacks, and you can continue to play in front of the chains, you can win games that way. But you need the defense to do its part, and so it's like, I don't even know, like, I don't think you can block Aaron Donald. Even with a full offensive line, I don't think you can block Aaron Donald. But the way things are going right now, it doesn't matter, because you're not going to be able to stop the Rams offense. Yeah. I wish I had positive things to say. I really do. Christopher, again, we're so bad. I feel like we're the punching bag for other teams to beat. It really does feel that way, doesn't it? You don't want to be the team that holds on to a losing coach to save face. What kind of message does that send to the players and the fan base? Yeah, I mean, I just think what's the alternative? Like, it's like you're just trying to get through a season at this point, and you're trying to maintain the locker room. And so, to me, that is the question. It's not about whether you think DA should be the coach of the team. It's whether the players think DA should be the coach of the team, right? And if they still do, and they still rally behind him, then that's your answer. If they don't, if you lose the locker room, then that's a different story. I don't think he's lost the locker room. Now, I haven't been in the locker room today. I don't know if that changes in 1 week. I don't know if maybe the cold weather makes things more miserable, but it doesn't strike me as like a lot of sniping going on. I think that this team is frustrated and this team wants to win games. I don't think DA has lost the support of the players. So that's why you keep the head coach. So sometimes you just have a bad season, right? Like, that's the thing, is a bad season is not the end of the world. And if you fire a coach every time you have a bad season, you're going to have a very rough time because you were not able to have any continuity and you were not able to build anything because every time you struggle and go 5-12, I still struggle to do the 17 in my head. And then it's like, oh, gone, jettison, start over. When you bring in a new coach and a new scheme and a new set of coordinators, and then you try to rebuild the defense and do something else and blah blah blah. And it's like that's difficult. If you go look at what the Giants have done the last several years, that's difficult, right? Because you're bringing in a new coach and things change, and then the players have a new coach, and sure, the combination has to be right, but at a certain point, you got to let a guy build a program. Now, in DA's case, it's a little different because he has been here, so it's not like you have this complete overhaul. But if you bring in a new coach, it is a complete overhaul. So that's where you're looking at. Jason Brown, and it is likely AK is gone at the beginning of next season. That's true. Here's the other thing, and this is kind of where I'm at with it, is you can't tank this year. There's no first round pick at the end of the rainbow. So if you want to give Dennis Allen another chance, which I think is what's going to happen, is you give him another chance at the beginning of next season and you say, okay, let's see it. Let's see you turn this thing around. And you give him the first half of the season to make his case and to try to turn things around. If it works, great. Fantastic. If it doesn't, then that's the season you were going to have to tank anyway. And so you go into that season, and if everything goes down in flames and you end up with a top 5 pick, there's a sales pitch for the next head coach. But, right now, I don't think you're going to be able to bring in anybody. And especially not someone who knows that if they struggle, you're going to fire them into the sun. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But like I said in my opening rant, I think you do need to make major changes in how things are done and how you're operating, because clearly there's a disconnect. Marianne Williams ring. We have a defense that does not create turnovers. It's baffling to me. There's a certain level of randomness in turnovers and takeaways and making them happen in big moments. But there's no randomness to the fact that this team just does not generate turnovers. They forced one fumble today. They weren't able to get on top of it. There weren't any close interceptions, right? I don't know. It's baffling to me that this team cannot generate turnovers in any meaningful way. And I mean, I don't know how you fix that, but it's very frustrating to watch. Yes, sir, fan. We just need to tank for a good second round pick. I mean, at this rate, the Saints are going to get a pretty nice second round pick. Yeah. Ariane again. I sure hope the high point of this year wasn't the Raiders game. It sure looks like that's going to be the case. Medical staff and conditioning coaches need reevaluating. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question in terms of the medical staff. I actually think Matt Ray was a good hire, and it might take a little while. We saw this with the Pelicans when they changed training staffs. In that first year, you really struggled with health, and then from a wider vantage point, it started to improve. Obviously, Zion is another question, but it takes some time to implement that. I think Matt Ray is doing a fine job. But yeah, I mean, I think the training staff you do need to reevaluate in terms of what they're doing and how they're getting players back. But yeah, the toe injuries, the calf injuries is brutal. You lost Eric McCoy. He's on injured reserve. You started Josh Andrews, who I have to look at the tape. I don't know how he fared. I know he had one bad snap. I'm sure he had his struggles, as you would have expected. But yeah, I mean, losing your key players every season for extended periods of time, it starts to be beyond like just bad luck. Yeah. Adam Michaels kicking the can down the street with bad contracts too. It caught up, and now you have no youth and no tradable assets. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive in terms of assets and contracts, because the Saints have never been a team that overspends in free agency. At least not in terms of bringing in other players. Like they'll pay top dollar for their own players, but you typically don't see the Saints just break the bank to bring in a free agent. They like to find the quote unquote steals, those guys that might be flying under the radar. Demario Davis is a good example. So I don't know if the contracts and the assets are the same thing, but it's more that it's more of a volume issue, in my opinion, where, for example, you traded the entire back half of your draft to go up and get Adam Troutman. Now, Adam Troutman has been fine as a third round pick, a depth tight end, but he has not been, a guy who you could now go back and justify. It's like so you have a dartboard, right? And you have 5 darts. And and you just need to hit one bullseye. And instead of shooting 5 times at the dartboard, you said, okay, I'm going to give you 4 of my 5 darts so that I can take one step closer to the board. Now, you've still got to hit that bullseye. You feel more confident that being closer to the board, you're able to hit that bullseye more often than you would normally from the further back, right? But you still got to have the right aim, and you still got to, get your form right, and you still got to hit it. Now, I don't know about you, but I still can't hit a bullseye whether I'm standing 3 feet away from it or not. And so, like, that's the situation you have, right? But would it have made more sense to just stand there and take 5 shots at it? Probably. And you look at the depth now, and I think that approach in the draft is the bigger culprit behind not having depth, right? Like, the Saints aren't without their first round pick next season because they signed a bunch of bad contracts. They're without their first round pick next season because they wanted to go all in for this year with DA. And just like that dartboard, they missed the mark. All right. We have about 50 more comments in since I culled them. So let's yes. I think that was a good metaphor. I came up with that on the spot. But I think it's a good metaphor because that's exactly what's been happening. And I think that is a big issue. But you're right. It is how Mickey goes through the draft. And when it's successful, great. But I think over time, it has been detrimental to the depth of this football team and the long-term prospects in terms of developing talent in-house. But yeah. Yes, sir, fan 02. Well, at least we got LSU going to the SEC championship. I agree. I'm excited. I enjoyed watching LSU this year. It's been a long time since I've had fun watching LSU games, but it has helped make football weekends more palatable. And I will be going to Atlanta to cover that game, so I'm excited about that. I was also in Atlanta for the last time they were at the SEC championship. And I was there for the Peach Bowl. I've watched a lot of LSU games in Atlanta. Kind of strange. Tyrone Jones. Saints lost to bad teams. Saints lose to bad teams. Seems like they were better, but they are bad. I'm confused what this means. But yes, the Saints, yeah, it's not a situation where the Saints are playing down to their opponents. That's the frustrating thing, is they are very much playing worse than their opponents. Like, the wild thing is the Saints almost beat the Vikings, a team that is 7-1 right now, 8-1. They just beat the Bills today. So figure that one out, right? Like they without Michael Thomas, without Jarvis Landry playing a shell of himself, Andy Dalton making his first start, they had a 25-22 lead late in that game. I think that's right. Or maybe it was 22-20. I don't know. They had a lead in the fourth quarter of that game, and they blew it. But yeah, it's not the team we were expecting. Jay Jarrell, Tyrann Mathieu has been avoiding tackling anyone to the team. Think they'd sell some jerseys. No other reason to hire him. Local fandom versus on-field performance means nothing. Yeah, I mean, he has not lived up to the expectations that you had. I don't think he's been as bad as people want to say he has been. I just think this team has been bad across the board, and he's been a part of that. Let's see. Let's go for a couple more questions, and then I will cut this off. Mithra, We going more in the direction of the Jags. That's not what you want to hear. Well, we have an optimist, Frederick Wagner. The Saints will win next Sunday, and they will win 5 more games. I actually don't think beating the Rams is outside the realm of possibility, especially if Matthew Stafford doesn't play. Because if you want to talk about disappointing teams, we can talk about the Saints all you want. The reigning Super Bowl champions are right up there on that list. It's a little easier to stomach, because you obviously have a Super Bowl ring. It's kind of like when you watched LSU in 2020 and you were like, well, this is awful, but hey, at least we got that. But they're struggling just as hard as the Saints are. After my own heart. Yes, sir, fan. 02, big Modern Warfare fan. Cut the bullcrap, Jeff. These are the same players Sean Payton had last year, and we went 9-8. So what gives? The players are not listening to DA. I agree with that. Right? I've made that exact point. Is that, like, someone came to me on Twitter and was like, well, Sean Payton couldn't even win with all these injuries. And it's like, he literally did. Last season, literally had more injuries that he had to deal with. They set an NFL record for players started in a single season. They went 9-8. So yes, they did deal with this stuff last year. And yes, Sean Payton is a Hall of Fame head coach. And if anything, all this season has reinforced just how good of a head coach Sean Payton has been and is. Whether losing games is a sign that they're not listening to the head coach, I don't know. But I don't think that losing games and losing the locker room are the same thing. At a certain point, being bad enough just drives everyone insane. And, it's something you have to address, and you have to make changes simply to reset the deck and get everyone on a level kind of field. But I don't know if that's something you do mid-season. I don't see how it would fix things this season. So yeah. Levon says, go listen to the DA interview. He said he doesn't care if he loses the locker room. Go check it out. Well, let's see.
Well, look, I mean, when you get in situations like these, you have to fight your way out of it. It wasn't good enough in all phases. We didn't play well enough. We didn't coach well enough. We have to do a better job. We fought ourselves back, got back into the game at halftime, felt like we were in a good position, and we really just didn't do anything in the second half, so we have to be better.
Yeah, late in the game, third down, fourth down, you guys are missing all the interior offensive line. You ran behind them both times. Why did you guys do that there? Well,
we felt like we could make a first down, and we didn't do it. And we have to be able to make, we got to be able to make, what was it, 1.5 yards, I think, so we have to be able to make that. So, we got to make it.
Is that frustrating on penalties?
Very, yeah. And look, I'll go back and look at all of them. I know some of them certainly look legitimate. So we'll have to go back and look at it. But I think we had 10. I think they had 3 or 4. So and some of those that we had specifically on defense, kept drives alive, gave them first downs. So yeah, it's disappointing.
Dennis, did you guys expect to have this much trouble running the ball today?
That wasn't the bite I thought it was, but let's see.
We have the right people in this locker room. We've got the right people on this team and in this organization. And the only way we can do it is we got to stick together and understand what we have to do. Everybody needs to look at themselves and say, what can I do better? And if we do that, we'll get this thing turned around.
Let's see. I had the bite, but I can't find it. I'll put it in the actual podcast. This might be it. Sorry.
Well, look, I mean, when you get in situations like these, well, look, yeah, some of the fouls are.
Okay, I give up. There, I know what bite you're talking about. I'll put it in the actual podcast. But effectively, what he says is he was asked if he's worried about the fracturing of the locker room. He said no, and he effectively said no because the leaders in the room are going to take care of the leadership in the room, and he thinks they have the right players. And Andy Dalton echoed him, and I don't think that he said he doesn't care if he loses the locker room. He said that he does not think that he does not believe that the locker room splintering is something that will happen. Whether that's the case, I don't know. And I've always kind of felt this about head coaching situations. Like, no one benefits from firing your head coach midseason. You don't. You do it if you have to. And I don't think that that's the case here. Now, if you get to a point where the players no longer want to play for the coach and you see effort, and like Matt Rule, for instance, got fired after his players stopped playing hard. That is a different situation. I did think that you got to a dangerous point late in this game where you see, like, man, are they playing hard enough? And I think the last two games, at the end of the game, there were some serious questions to be asked about those last few drives where you were unable to stop a team that you knew was running. But I don't think that he is taking for granted the situation that he's in right now. Merlin John Hebert Jr. The Saints are going to be bottom feeders for the next few years. Yeah, I mean, it sure is trending that way. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's really tough to figure out. Ghoul Wizard. It's an interesting name. He lost the locker room once they let CJ Gardner-Johnson go. Now look at all the mishandled injuries. It's just toxic at this point. It very well could be. I do think that part of jettisoning CJ was trying to avoid the toxicity that was going to come with not giving him that long-term deal. Now, should they have given him the long-term deal? I would have argued yes. I said that from the beginning. But I understand why they had to trade him because of that. If you're not going to pay him, there's no way he would have been like, oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll just play this season out. Let's move on. That guy, like, he's a mental ninja. And so, yeah. Now, whether that means he lost the locker room, I don't know. This team has lost games. And whenever you lose games, you're going to be in trouble. All right. One more question, and then I'll close this out. Don Tomasino, Loomis and DA believe this team was good enough with Winston, so they traded our first-round pick. Now they won't even put Winston in. Fire them both. Now, outside of that final bit, I agree 100%. If you made your bed with Jameis Winston as your presumptive starting quarterback, and you drove this thing into the ground with Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback, you should at least go, like, stay your own course, stay the course you set and put Jameis back in, assuming he is healthy enough to do so, which you have already declared he is. So I agree with that. I would be very surprised if you do not see Jameis Winston back on the field next week. Now, if it becomes a question of whether he can survive behind the offensive line that you can run out there, that's another story. But I think you are 100% making a serious consideration to putting him out there, and I would argue that it's the only logical course after watching what's happened the last 2 weeks. But all right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Inside Black and Gold, the post-game therapy session that I feel like was much needed. Hopefully we figured a few things out, because the Saints surely didn't. Thanks everyone who chimed in, who left a comment, who listened. Make sure you head over and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, Overcast, whatever they all are. Radio Public. I could keep naming them. Make sure to go over there, hit the subscribe button, rate and review, and hit me up on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to hear. One of these weeks, maybe there will be some positivity and I can stop just being so glum, but not this week. Not this week. All right, y'all. Peace.